Hey guys, Andy here with the Home Seekers podcast. Joined with me today is Simon, one of our mortgage advisors here at Mortgage HQ. Today, we're taking a little bit of a different approach. We're going to bust some myths. We've got 5 that we've written down from the last week that, people have come to us and really said that they can't, proceed or look towards property because of, these 5 reasons, right? So we kind of want to hit them head on and try and understand exactly what they are. So let's just get straight to the chase here. First one, Simon, 20% deposit. I can't buy because I don't have a 20% deposit. Now, we know that this isn't the case. Let's bust this myth wide open.
Yeah, I think we've covered this in a lot more detail in some of our previous podcasts. But yeah, it's a myth. You don't need 20%. You can get away with 10, 15, and in some cases you can get as low as 5, and I've heard him lower than 5.
Lower than 5?
Lower than 5.
Man.
It's possible.
I know, I think we actually talked about this yesterday with a client that I had, right, is that they want to go on at 5%, and I found out one of the main banks are even doing 5%. Like a few of them are, right?
Yeah, 5%. You'd have to go with different, not main bank if you want to go lower than 5.
Yeah.
There are big caveat to this. There are huge criteria and rungs you need to get over. But don't need 20%, Andy.
Yeah, I know that makes sense, right? 10% is the easy way in. 5% can be done. Look, when we're talking about these 5%, right, it is difficult. That you've got to have really good income, good serviceability, because the rates are going to be astronomical. They're going to be higher than high, right? But sometimes it's an option to get in. And that's the question is, we talk downstairs, and we're going to talk about this a bit later on, is like the uncertainty about what's actually happening with rates. But we can't control these things. If we can't control them, we shouldn't really focus on them, right? So we're not going to dive into rates and what to expect, but it's a blanket rule. If you're going to get into the market and the only way you can do is through these higher rates, it's probably a good option to kind of explore, right?
I would say so. Yeah, 100%. Holding yourself back from achieving goals because you think it's going to be hard isn't an excuse as far as I'm concerned. There is a way forward. Reach out for people that know those ways, and we can guide you through.
All right, so that's debunked. You can purchase with a deposit less than 20%. Now let's move to number 2. This is actually a quote. My main bank will look after me. I've been there for a long time, so they should be loyal.
Yeah, I've got several clients that are looking to buy their first home and have been at one bank their whole lives. And they think that they've got them at their best interest. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Look, at the end of the day, a bank is a business. They have to deal with a whole lot of things. One of those things is, the ever-changing environment with regards to regulations. They need to, as I mentioned before, they're a business. They need to adhere to their shareholders. They need to make a profit. They need to adjust to the market. And sometimes you looking to buy your first home isn't at the top of their priority list. So where we come in is we say, based on your specific circumstances, this is the right bank to go for based on the goals you're wanting to achieve.
Yeah, we've talked about this, I think, many times, right? Is that banks are there to provide lending to people that suit their criteria. And it doesn't matter if you've been there 5 years, for 5 minutes sometimes, or 20 odd years. If you don't fit that criteria, that bank might not be willing to lend you the money that others would be. So it's really like time doesn't equal loyalty, unfortunately. As much as we'd like to think it does, it doesn't, right? But the key thing here is that in certain instances, yes, your main bank will be more likely to lend you money for these low deposits as well, right? So there are some caveats to this, is that certain banks will allow you lower deposits because you've been with them, but being with them only means 3 months plus, right? 3 to 6 months plus doesn't mean 20 odd years.
Correct.
So there are instances as well where, there are certain policies laid down by the banks that you might come along and say, hey, John, let's just go and put your income, open a bank with this particular bank, put your income into this particular bank, and after 3 months, you're now classed as a main bank customer, which then opens your opportunity to 2 options, not just one, right? So
good strategy.
So time doesn't equal loyalty.
Not at all.
Fantastic. So that's
debunked.
Debunked. Gone. Number 3. This is one I think we might spend a little bit of time on, in all honesty, because it's all about secondary tax. We've talked about secondary tax before, and this is something I hear far too often, and probably you have too. If I get another job, I'll be taxed more. Let's discuss that.
Yeah, I don't think the comment's complete enough. You know, like if you're bringing in more income, of course, you're going to be paying more tax, right? But let me be clear. Our tax system in New Zealand, you have runs. Imagine a bucket and you get a vivid and you write on the different levels. You start off at, what is it, 10.5?
10.5%, I think, is 17 and a half K. I
Regardless,
think.
don't take us for gospel, but look on the IRD website. There are different runs, right? Gets up to 28, 30, 32. I think, some people are looking to increase that even further. The red team.
Moving on.
The reason why I think it's important to understand that this as a bucket, and you've got multiple incomes, is that if you're pouring them in, yes, you're going to be paying more tax, but it doesn't actually matter which one comes first or second, right? And so if you get a secondary job, it's not to say that you'll get penalized for it. It's the exact same as if you were getting paid more on the first job. I want to put a small caveat to that, is that, sometimes the way the tax is calculated is that you may be overtaxed, but you'll be liable to get that tax back at the end of the year when you do your return.
Yeah. So if anyone here listened to the podcast I did with Sophia, I think it was last week or the week before, she explained exactly how a second job allowed her to get into a first home, right? And the thing people really need to understand here is that you don't get taxed more for having a second job. Your annual income is taxed at a threshold, right? Now, let's just say, argument's sake, this is just an argument's sake, let's just say $70,000 has a tax bracket of 28%. Let's just hypothetically say that. If you earn, say $40,000 with one role, and 35 with another role, you're still going to be taxed at that 28% for both of those roles, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that your second role is going to be taxed at this massive, massive amount. The key thing to remember is that even if you do go into the hundreds, early hundreds, it is more or less staged, as you said, with this bucket. You fill up the first bucket, that full bucket of money is taxed at 10.5%. The next one at 17.5%. The next one at 28%. We're not tax gurus, but that's literally how it works. Just because you move into a 33% tax bracket doesn't mean that your entire income is taxed at 33%.
Yeah, that's the effective rate. The effective rate is the rate that you pay based on the income and this system. So it's not, it's the averaging effect based on those different rates.
Over a 12-month period. So secondary tax, you're going to get taxed more. Debunked. Gone. Get out of here. Now the fourth one, here, and this is something we heard, I think, a lot in maybe last year, if not the year before, and it was all about the avocados and the toast and the cafes, right? So socializing at cafes mean that I can't buy a house. That's just not true.
Well, there was a moment whereby the banks were a lot more stringent on this. And what they did essentially is looked through your statements and took all your expenses that you were paying, whether that be additional coffees or going out or shouting mum, a Mother's Day gift or whatever it is. They accumulate these and they put them on your expense list. Now what they do is they say, well, generally this is what a family of this size is going to pay for their expenses. If you're under that, we're going to charge that full amount. And if you want to argue that your expenses are lower than that, then we're going to look into it in more depth. If your expenses are over that and you just go to the minimum, what's called the HEB value, then the bank's not going to go into it with any detail like they used to when this CCCFA law came in, and have a quick Google of that. Essentially, we've gone through the tough times of what that legislation did. There's been some iterations to it, and banks are no longer as stringent as possible. So in effect, this isn't going to hold you back from buying your first home.
One thing that we would say on top of that, though, is that we do strongly advise people get into good habits, right, before they make this change. And that's where the 60-30-10 rule that we talk so heavily about really can come in here, because if you do get a good handle on your accounts, particularly over the 3 to 6 months in which you're looking to purchase a property, it's going to look better in the bank's eyes either way. But remove the bank from this equation for a second. It's actually helping you understand what it's like to be a little more controlled with your money, right? Look at how you are spending your money and build better habits. We know building habits is extremely difficult to do, but sometimes things do force your hand, like purchasing property. So smashed avocado on toast ain't going to stop you from purchasing a property unless it's happening every other minute of every other day, and you're racking up hundreds and hundreds a week on smashed avocado on toast. But we've gone from one extreme to the next. We're in a really happy place where we are looking at the overall, I guess, character of somebody, right, and their expense. So don't think that these little things or Christmases or birthdays are going to hold people back. We as advisors have the ability to outline to the bank to say, hey, look, we just had a wedding that this person was paying for. We just had a birthday that this person was paying for. Can justify those expenses and remove them, right? That's exactly how it works with you guys talking to the banks and diarying this, right?
Correct, yeah. So essentially, the bank is looking at it from a perspective that's more realistic. People aren't going to have a family wedding every year.
No.
They're not going to have these large holidays every year. And when they look to make large purchases, not for the full 30 years of the mortgage, but especially in the short term, they're going to reduce their budget on these types of things. And the reduction in that can go towards servicing the mortgage.
Yeah. So again, point number 4, I think, is debunked. Good. Now moving on to point number 5 is my bank declined me, but the second tier lenders, that we have available to us, they're going to be easier to get lending from. So the main bank said, no, I can go to a second tier lender. It's easier. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I've actually had this quite a lot in the last week or so.
Wow. Okay.
I've had a lot of people assume that because, for example, we're just scraping through in terms of the ability for the bank to lend you money based on your ability to service it.
Well, your income, yeah.
Yeah, and so that box is ticked, but then they look at your account conduct and see, you've got some bills that you haven't paid recently, and even though it's very tight and it's just meeting the mark, we're putting this in the context of the fact that you haven't paid that credit card over the last 3 months, and therefore we're going to decline the application. Clients would come to me and say, well, let's just go to second tier. Well, it's not as easy as that. Although the second tier lender may look at that and say, yeah, we can tick the box and look past the fact that you haven't paid this credit card, but we're going to apply a higher risk servicing test rate. And so what that means is, because you scraped through at main bank and they're not looking past the fact that you didn't pay your credit card bill over the last 3 months, and this other second tier lender doesn't mean that you can service it based on their
what you're trying to say
calculations.
here is that the main banks have a testing rate. Let's just say it's 8.5%. What is it?
8.9.
Somewhere around there. Now, you might be able to scrape through in that and afford a mortgage on 8.9, but the second tier lenders might have a testing rate of 10%.
Well, not in all cases, but in the case that I just mentioned there, where they are applying a higher test rate because of the fact that you haven't paid that credit card, means that they will look past it, but because you only just serviced on the other one, doesn't mean correct.
You need more income.
So it's not as easy.
Yeah.
At the second.
So it's really about having arrears, maybe not paying a bill but not realizing it, can affect you. If you've got enough income, it should be okay, right? If your income's strong enough, it should be okay. However, when you're teetering on that line of can we do it or can't we do it, what you're saying is it's not actually easier at a second tier lender. It's actually way, way harder. It's not as easy to think that you can just default to a second tier lender. Yeah. In some cases, it is easy to go to a second tier lender because, you've got huge income and that issue with not paying the credit card is there, but you make it up on the other side. And now let's be honest about the second tier lenders here as well. There's always going to be a goal to revert back to the main banks, right? To get the lower rates. So even if you do get lending at a second tier lender, you have to be looking at getting your account conduct back in line, right? You have to be looking at either creating equity in the property or paying down debt fast enough to get that equity position up. So it's not like we're going to sit here for 3, 4, 5 years. The goal really is to get there, provide a solution if it can happen, and then move out, right?
But ideally what you do is you get in touch with Andy at Wealth HQ and you work through these things in advance and put a plan in place to buy your first home.
Yeah. And we're going to get to that because we've debunked 5 myths. And you and I were just having lunch a second ago. And something, I don't know what it was. I just happened to ask these 2 girls, both actually that were working at the place that we were at, around their appetite and property and their thought process. And they were in the mid-20s. And one of them really, really surprised me, right? And it came down to mentality, where the other one came down to emotion. Now, I want to kind of talk about this because I feel that we don't maybe get out of our bubble enough and talk to people in these positions. And you were there with me and you heard the first one was, a few of the questions, the comments were like, I can't buy a home unless mum and dad helps me, which I think a lot of people are really feeling right now. We're assuming that, savings are possible, apparently. And, not buying, this person didn't really have the option of Kiwisaver because they had immigrated to the country and you have to obviously have been Kiwisaver for 3 years. But the one thing that you've got to think about is even if you are in Kiwisaver now and you can't use it for 3 years, you need to start thinking about the plan in 3, 4, 5 years' time, which I feel was kind of missing here. And what it came down to for me was, the mindset, having a solutions-based mindset versus like this, it's everyone else's problem. Right now, how well can you resonate to that and what can you add from what you saw today?
It's about what you can change and focusing on those aspects. I'm not saying what they brought up was wrong. No. It's just, what can you do about it? What can you do about the current economic environment?
Can't control it.
You're not in the top echelons of government. You're not in the top echelons of commerce, and you can't have these major effects. You don't have a $1 trillion business to change things, and you're not in politics and haven't got the ability to do it. So what can you change on? What can you focus on? And so that's what we focus on here at Mortgage HQ and Wealth HQ, to help people in those positions to get through. And that's what I employ these people to also think about. It was a bit of an eye-opener for me because it's been some time since I was in that position. And so it reminded me of the struggles of where it is very hard to get into your first home. But I promise you that there are different types of hard. When you get later on in life, less freedom, less flexibility, when you get tied down and, kids, but also mortgages and responsibilities and all of this. There's a bit of a yin and yang. So what you do is you focus on what you can achieve. And I would hope to think that at Wealth HQ and at Mortgage HQ, we have the capacity to help you move forward faster than you otherwise would have.
I think it's important to, and you touched on this, is like, we focus on the controllables, not the uncontrollables. We can't control who runs this country. Well, many voices can. We can't control what's going on with the interest rates. There's a lot we can't control, but there are certain things that we can control. We can control our spending. We have the ability to earn more money if we want to. There are many ways that people are going to earn more money. It's all about the dedication. And look, this one person did say, I might not want to buy a home. My answer really was like, right now. You don't want to buy a house right now. And this is kind of where I think my mind went, is that this person said that we can't use Kiwisaver, 25, remember. So I want to run a scenario, because before I came in here, I jumped on to sorted.co.nz and I ran some numbers just with Kiwisaver and playing with this, right? And I threw in some numbers. A 25-year-old with a $75,000 income, all right? They started with $15,000. In 5 years, at a 3% contribution rate, which is the minimum, they would have about $38K in their Kiwisaver, right? Now, the same person, if they chose to go from 3% to 10%, they wouldn't have a $38,000 contribution towards the first home. They would have a $66,000 contribution. Now, the difference, I've gone down this far, man, the difference between the 3% on your net income versus the 10% is about $100 a week. I guarantee you, when you're renting, when you're living a relatively free life, you can probably get away with not earning that $100 for the greater good, because we've all done it. Right? We've made sacrifices, and when you make small changes, it's really easy. The problem is that with these small changes, you don't actually see the long-term picture because it's not happening right now, and we're just creatures that we want everything now, right? So that was kind of where I was thinking, and it moved into the second person that we spoke to, and she had a completely different outlook on it, and I've sort of broken it down to a few keywords, right? And it's as simple as this. She noted, she's scared of change, the unknown, the what ifs, not educated, and the whole I don't want to do this right now. But it also came along with some financial decisions her parents made about a rental property, which probably wasn't the right thing. Didn't get it. We don't know the backstory, but left her a little bit scarred. But what it showed was that she was scared of the unknown and the risk of buying versus identifying the potential risks, mitigating them, and building a plan to grow. Like, all valid risks that someone in 25 years old would probably have. But you don't have to be scared, right? You don't have to not understand or be educated, because there's a lot out there that can help. And it really blew my mind, man. Like, it was one of those things that I was like, we don't get out there and talk to people like this enough. But you're big on identifying risks and sort of mitigating them and planning for the future, right? So like, if you talk, the girl which we spoke to today, what would you have to say in an open forum? Because I'm going to put a caveat here. Like, I'm 32 years old and I got called old by this person, right? Which is ridiculous. But like, identifying the risks, mitigating the risks is extremely important in planning for the future, right?
Yeah. It helps you feel a little bit more in control. I want to challenge you a little bit on the fact that you don't have to be scared. I think being scared is good. I think it's what you do when you are scared. Do you continue to push forward? Do you develop a plan? Because I promise you, that hero in that story that faced that dragon was scared, but he fought the dragon anyway and saved the town. Right? Maybe this brings you back to some sort of like movie you've watched recently. Maybe it's The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings.
That's fight or flight, right?
Yeah, and so what I'm getting at here is that those feelings are valid and real, and you should be feeling that way. It is a big decision to buy a home, taking on this huge debt. It's just, what do you do about that? Because doing nothing, there's still a risk in that. People think that there's no risk, but there is. So you either do nothing and stay in the same position or go backwards, or you do something about it and slowly, incrementally go into a better direction. Yeah. And so you are going to be scared in either way. You might as well go into a better place.
Yeah. And I think it's probably a little bit easier as well. If people around you are doing the same thing, you're more likely to probably follow suit, right? It's hard to be that black sheep when all your friends are going out and you don't have these sort of goals. And I'm not saying it's wrong to not have these goals at all. Like, my point of view is completely different to a lot of other people's point of views, right? We look at property as the way to create wealth because we've seen it work and we've seen it happen. And what I really looked at, and you're right, being scared is okay. But it was just like listening to it, and it's it's going to sound so silly for me to say this, but you don't know what you don't know, right? It sounds so silly, but you don't, right? Like the key thing is, I think that with knowledge and with experience and enough time to digest, you can start to alleviate some of those concerns and those feelings to harness them in the right direction, right? So what I think that today really brought for me was, other than breaking down some myths and kind of busting them wide open, was that talking to these two girls really kind of opened my mind up at saying, wow, like, people out there really do think they can't purchase property. People out there are scared. And how do we help those people, I think is where I'm trying to get at, is that how can we harness the education, the being scared, effectively hold people's hands to being able to make the right decision, whether that's 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months down the track. Because I think it's little changes, like I talked to you about that Kiwisaver thing, can make massive differences. And you're not helping your current self. And sometimes it's hard to make change when you don't see immediate gratification. But helping your future self is never going to go amiss. Like, that's something I think people should always look at, right?
Agreed.
So now that's pretty much the podcast for today.
Sorry, Andy. Actually, I want to put you on the back foot here. I was hoping that before we end the podcast, I could put you in the hot seat. I haven't run this by you, but what I was thinking I could do, if I could do that really quickly, is bring up on the Wealth HQ Facebook page maybe some of the comments that have been put on there from our clients and or prospective clients and or listeners, and run through some of these comments, and maybe you could answer them right now. Is that okay? Sorry if you...
Sure. I don't manage this, so I have no idea what's coming up. So,
well, Andy might get red-faced, but I promise you this is all in good faith. And sorry about this, Andy, but here are a few. So let's have a look here. What's a good one? All right, here's one. I have $10,000 in Kiwisaver. Can I get into my own home and not pay rent? Instead, start paying off the house myself.
Yeah. Lofty goals. I love where the second part of that really went. Obviously, these goals to purchase property. $10,000 in Kiwisaver without anything else, it's unfortunately not going to work, right? We need a minimum 5% deposit, ideally 10. But I think with that particular person, it's about looking at strategies to grow that as quick as possible. Potentially even looking at purchase with family, friends, who knows, but $10,000 unfortunately won't really cut the mustard at this point in time. But there are definitely ways to accelerate that, like I've kind of talked about today already.
Nice. So get in touch and we can help you develop a savings plan.
Most certainly.
Cool. All right, here's one. Where are you guys located exactly?
It's an interesting one. I battle with this all the time. Well, we're located in Auckland, Half Moon Bay, down in the marina there. So if you are in East Auckland, feel free to pop down. We're above a few of the eateries here. But in saying that, we deal with all of our clients online as well. So we have clients over in Singapore. We have clients in Australia. We've got clients obviously here in New Zealand, anywhere around the country, which is the good part about it. But we are located at East Auckland.
Here's a cheeky but funny one. I don't know how you're going to answer this, but you've heard this thing. We hold our clients' hands along the whole process. Well, this guy says, will you pay the repayments for me? Never mind holding my hand.
No, we will not pay a mortgage payment for somebody. We will hold their hands to show them how to be able to purchase property. But unfortunately, we're not a bank. I don't have tons of money that we can just give out. So no, we won't.
Maybe we'll do a raffle one day and we'll pay someone's first repayment.
Maybe, first or second, who knows, first 3 months. Maybe we will do that. But unfortunately, I'm sorry, my friend, we won't pay for your mortgage repayments.
One last one.
All right.
Now, this person's keen to get in touch. What do I do and how can I get your help?
Okay, easy one. The first thing I think really to start is really understand what you can and cannot do. And that's where we start with the Wealth HQ side, right? It's building a picture. A lot of people don't understand their possibilities and how long it's going to take them to get to where they need to go. And that's being a first time. The easiest thing to do is to jump onto whq.co.nz, download the Mojo map. And when you download that, our team get notified. We'll reach out, we'll more or less book a strategy session in place with one of our financial advisors. What that session will provide you with is a timeline, more or less, of how long it's going to take you to purchase a property, what you need to do to accelerate that, and potentially the risks which are going to come along that journey as well. The great thing is that we're there every single month to make sure that you are sticking to the plan. And if you're not, you're going to hear from us because our goal is to get you into a property as quick as possible, aligned goals. When they are ready, and we know that that won't take too long, it's all about ensuring that one of our friendly team at Mortgage HQ can do the lending, can go to the banks, be their biggest advocate and get them the lending that they need, whether that's at 5%, 10%, 15 or 20. First, main banks or second tier lenders, depending on the situation, we'll do whatever we can to make it work. So the key thing that I look at is a lot of people are just scared to take action. Reach out. There is literally no negative in taking action. The worst case scenario, literally the worst case scenario, is that we can't do anything more than what you're already doing. That's a pretty small risk to take for a 30-minute consultation, and it's all free, right? The best case scenario is that you realize that you can probably purchase or achieve your goals a lot faster than what you originally thought. So I would encourage anybody that might be listening, know anybody, feel like they might be able to do it, not just themselves, but maybe their friend, their their family, reach out, spend 30 minutes with us, and we'll be able to tell you exactly what you can or cannot do. We don't bite. It's that easy. Like there's nothing negative to take from this. I would just say reach out and let's make it happen.
Cool.
And is that it?
What did everyone think of how Andy did? Let us know in the comments, and maybe your comment will be read next time.
Yeah, look, one thing I would like, if anyone is listening, well, obviously there are people listening to this and watching it as well. We get hit with a lot of questions on the daily. I'd love to kind of build up a little bit of a catalog of myths or things that you hear or things that people say, and we can tackle them on the next podcast relatively easily. Would love to be able to do that, be a little bit more interactive. We want to also understand what you guys want to hear, I think, as well. Like going out today and talking to a few other people really opened my eyes to think, okay, are we talking too high level, or do we really need to dive down into a little bit more of the key items? So what I'd ask all of you, if you're still with us, leave a comment, reach out, tell us what you want to hear, and whatever specialist that we need to get into this room to talk to us about it, we can make that happen. So is that it for today? No more questions?
No more surprise questions.
Fantastic. Look, appreciate you all joining us as always. Simon, thank you very much for putting me on the spot and running through those 5 myths and busting them for Kiwis out there trying to get a step forward. And as always, if there's anything that we can help with, please reach out. mhq.co.nz or whq.co.nz. Reference us if you want, or don't. That's fine. And we hope we can help you either get into property or take that next step into your first investment. Bye for now.